Greetings of peace. My name is Ram Hotep, broadcasting on behalf of 13signsastrology.com. I'm going to do this video on vampires. This video is going to be on vampires. It's going to be actually a series of videos. Keep in mind, I'm going to help you to understand exactly what the quarantine is, exactly why the quarantine took place, and kind of get into exactly what happened. So bear with me. I have a series of videos coming over the next day or so, maybe next few days. They're going to be going into the quarantine, but it's important that you understand vampires actually before I can get into exactly what the quarantine is. And the reason why you have to understand vampires in relationship to the quarantine is this. Vampires and the whole story and the history of vampires directly link back into the Earth quarantine, because when you get into what the real origins of vampires and where they really came from, you're going to find out that they directly link to the whole story of dragons and the whole story of the Earth quarantine. Now, I'm not going to get into all of that here. I'm going to first go ahead and break down to you exactly what vampires are, exactly how they function. Now, many of you, most of you, you watch the movies, and vampires are really fascinating now because of the different TV series, True Blood, the Twilight series. As far as the movie, the Twilight series, a lot of people are talking about vampires and have always been talking about vampires. But this is what I want you to see. Your concept of vampires and where you got your concept of vampires from go back to they go back to Western Europe. They go back to Western Europe. The concept of vampires. Now, vampires are much older than this, but I'm helping you to understand kind of like what they did with the whole history of vampires. They introduced your concept of vampires in Western Europe through a series of novels. And this is where you get your Dracula from and all of these different stories about vampires. All this came from Western Europe from a series of novels. And this is important because this concept of vampires and them having fangs and them drinking blood and to get energy and things of that nature, it's telling the truth. I'm not going to say it's a lie. I can't say it's a lie, but what it is it's not really giving you the whole truth. It's a really watered down version of exactly what vampires are. Now, vampires do feed off energy, and your concept of them drinking blood and things of that nature, see, that goes back to something a little bit deeper. That goes back to your blood drinkers, which was actually a race of beings that were reptilian in nature, that were your blood drinkers. These were your original blood drinkers, a race of reptilian beings. And this is going to tie you back into the quarantine, so keep this in mind. So when the other videos come out, you'll begin to understand what I'm saying now. So this might leave you with a few questions, but bear with me. I'm going to answer all your questions in these series of videos. So I'm going to link all this together. So the blood drinking aspect of the vampires and all of that, that goes back to this group of reptiles. This group of reptiles and this group of beings that live now in the center of the earth, but at one time these beings walked the earth. Now, those of you that know anything about vampires, you know that they talk about them. They come out at night. Usually they are controlled under the lunar forces. They're lunar creatures, and they usually don't like sunlight for the most part. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times they're depicted as wearing shades when the sun is out, because they don't want the sun to get in their eyes. They feed off of people's energy in order for them to live and exist. They need other people's energy in order for them to live and exist. And this is basically some of your attributes of vampires. Now, let me to help you to understand where they got that from. Now, to understand where they got that from, you must first understand this. You must understand that all knowledge and information that is presented to you, where it was back in the day through novels and then now through movies and things of that nature, when they present this knowledge and information to you, you have to keep in mind that it's basically a watered down version of something very high level, like a high level occult teaching. Usually, most of the time. Even when you're dealing with Dragon Ball Z, I mean, I could go on. I'm going to make a lot of videos dealing with a lot of your popular movies and your popular mythologies. I'm going to help you understand how they all go back to the occult with their high level. See, this is for like high level occult information. What they do is that they water it down and they give it to you in the form of vampire stories, you know, things of that nature. And they, you know, they make it look real interesting and fascinating. And they mix up a lot of stuff and they give you the finished product. So now you got people thinking that there are people walking around with fangs, biting people on the neck, and that they really, these vampires really exist. Like they go around biting people on the neck, and they feed off of this energy and they feed off of blood. Now, I'm not saying there are beings out there that drink blood, because this is a proven fact. Some of your world leaders drink blood. So, I mean, that's a proven fact. So I'm not saying that they're not beings that drink blood, but the concept of a vampire and what I'm saying is that all the different elements of a vampire that they mixed up and given to you as a ready-made package of a vampire is really a product, because they're trying to slowly and gradually introduce in a highly level occult topic to you. And this is how they do it. I mean, when they introduce the mysteries, it's done in degrees. And the masses get it, or they call it going in, they usually get it on a very physical, mundane level. So, you know, the masses usually get things in story forms. Even in ancient Egypt and in different cultures, they always had the stories. Everything was done through stories. So the vampire stories were documented to record a high level occult story. So now, now that you have that out the way, and let me get into, and I'm going to help you to break down the different aspects of vampires and to show you where they all came from. Now, I've already described and explained to you that the blood drinking part goes back to the reptilians, a certain species of reptilians. Now, the vampires, they like to come out at night. They're controlled by lunar forces. What does this mean? What exactly does this mean? Now, this is interesting, because when you research the term vampire, first of all, let me say this. When you research the term vampire, you go to the root word, which is vamp. Now, a vamp was actually a female witch. Originally, it was a female witch. So these vampires that were doing these things, they had a different level of knowledge. And they actually were a group of women starting out in Europe. They were a group of women that had knowledge of blood, they had knowledge of energy, and they knew how to work with energy. So what a vampire essentially is one that, yes, they do take energy, but they learn how to work with energy. Now, there are different type of vampires. Now, let's go into the female aspect first. These first females, they were actually taught by males, believe it or not. These females were taught by males. Actually, some of them, the European vampires that got introduced to society, the vamps, believe it or not, these vamps were taught by Moorish men. What I mean by Moorish men is the Moors were the original inhabitants of Europe. And these Moors taught and initiated European, Caucasian looking women into a lot of stuff. They taught them sexual arts, because you got to remember, see, the Moors, they, you know what I'm saying, they knew about the sexual arts, the tantric, all that type of stuff, all the energy work, the alchemy, all of that stuff. The Moors brought all of that stuff into Europe. And actually, they taught the women first. You see, and when the European women basically were the first initiates into this type of information, and they in turn went back and they taught the men. So at first, when they learned how to take energy from the male and they learned about the sexual act, they would go back and have sex with the men. See, the men didn't know about having sex. And this is not racism, this is proven fact. This is a proven fact. The European males at one point did not know about having sex, because they weren't initiated into the sexual arts. Now, this doesn't mean that they weren't putting their penises in animals, putting their penises inside of other men, and even trying to put their penises inside of women, because they had the urge. But what I'm saying is that they weren't taught in the science of it. So when, you know, the passion aspect of it and the Kundalini aspect of it and all of that. So these European women, what they did was they were initiated by the Moors. They were taught this information. So they went and they would have sex with the European males once they, you know, figured out how to have sex. And the male would get drained after having sex, because he would, you know, he would come, he would have an orgasm. And, you know, most males know that after you come or have an orgasm, most men get tired, especially if they're not initiated into how to ejaculate versus ejaculate. So when men ejaculate, they become tired. And this is where the whole concept of the vamp came from. They would call the women vamps because they would take their energy. So that's where you got the first aspect of vampires from. As far as them taking people's energy, that's the first degree of it. Now there's different degrees of it. Remember I was telling you that, so we're going to go into that. So the first degree of it was the women. They were called vamps and they took energy or whatever. Now let's get into the Moors and their concept of it. You see, and they got their concept of vampires from India, from Arabia, South America. See, the Moors were travelers. They were travelers. So they knew a lot of different occult information and they gathered a lot of occult information. So they were called alchemists. I'm going to do a video on alchemy because they were able to mix up a lot of occult information and they came up with a ready-made system. And this is where you get your term Wicca from and the witches and all that from. See, they taught the European women Wicca and witchcraft. Now, those of you that are Europeans, Caucasians listening to this, bear with me. This is not racism because I'm going to point this out too. You guys have sat here and listened to your scholars and they teach all kind of racism and alien doctrine and information saying that, you know what I'm saying? They teach all kind of racism, basically saying that black people or Nubian people or people of Moorish descent never really had any contact with alien beings. And there's people teaching this right now, the Law of One and these different groups that you know about. So this is why I'm not knocking them, but I just want you to bear with me because you listen to them and you listen to them teach their perspective on what they believe how these aliens came to Earth, and they believe that most Caucasians were from this higher alien force, and this is why Caucasians came to this planet later, and why you don't find any old Caucasian bones like you do find old bones of Nubians or black people, because these Caucasian people were basically aliens that came down. And that's really racism in the alien community, just to keep it real with you. So me, like I said, I'm not a racist at all. Like, I'm just keeping it real with you. I deal with real live factual, like I do a lot of research. That's what I do. I do a lot of research based on ancient cultures and indigenous cultures, and based on, you know, I even research the European information. I research the Wiccan information, all of that. So this is why I'm able to understand a lot of things, a lot of different types of cultures, and a lot of different types of schools and systems of the occult, and to put them together and to help you to understand things, because I research everything on all levels and I don't let racism or anything blind me. So what I'm trying to get you guys to see, speaking to Europeans that are listening to this video, is that I want you to really listen to this and bear with me. So, and many of your high level cultists and Europeans know this. They know what I'm saying, the truth. So yeah, the Wiccan and the Wicca system was taught by the Moors to the Europeans. This was given to them by the Moors, and this was a system, you know, that was pretty much ready-made for them, and it suited them based on where they were, as far as where they were and their inhabitants and being in Europe. The system of Wicca fitted them, being Europeans. And you know, like when you deal with magic can be, it's different depending on which region you are in. So by them being in the region of Europe, system of Wicca fitted them for various reasons that I can't go into here because it's too long. So that's where, as far as like the whole vampires, the Moors had exceptional understanding of the original terms of vampires. So a lot of like what you hear about as far as vampires and this modern day aspect came from a lot of the misunderstandings of different European writers, and some of it was intentionally put out to the masses to basically kind of like deceive you, not even really to deceive you, but to introduce you to the concept of getting energy and taking energy from other people, but not really to help you to understand what it really was. So the Moors, they understood, see, this is another level of vampires. The Moors understood energy. They worked with energy, and they learned this through the Hindu doctrine, working with the Kundalini, or what some people call prana, working with chi, working with Shin, different aspects of energy. And it's different as you could draw energy from different sources, from lunar energy to solar energy. So as far as vampires, these vampires learn how to take energy from different places. They learn how to take energy from different places, and they learn how to store energy. And they can take energy through sex. They can take energy through the moon, because they dealt with lunar energy, and it's a reason for that. And this is going to help you to understand. When I get into the quarantine, you're going to understand why they dealt with lunar energy, because it's a reason why they dealt with lunar energy. And this is why vampires are associated with the moon, and like they always talk about the full moon and vampirism, because there's so much energy available that can be harnessed during the full moon. And this is why vampires are associated with the full moon. So they dealt with the moon and things of this nature. Now, they taught that basically if vampires couldn't get energy, they would die. If they couldn't, you know, some people say if they don't get the blood or whatever, they would die. Now, what this is, and they were also called, they would teach too also about vampires that they were actually immortal. As long as they could take and pull off energy. Those of you that watch the Twilight series know the guy in the Twilight series, he looks like he's about 23, 24 years old, but the guy's like 200, I think, or something. Don't quote me on the age as far as that being accurate, but I know he's in the hundreds. But he looks very young because he's an immortal. And I'm going to do videos on the Immortals too. So there's a lot of new information I got coming or whatever, but this vampire video is very key to help to walk you into this information that's coming. So these vampires knew how to store energy, and they were called Immortals because they could feed off other people's chi. See, it's different aspects of immortalism. Yeah, you got the immortal aspect of the soul when you die, but then you got the immortal aspect of the living. And this is why they were called the living dead. Because these vampires, they knew how to, and these were more, they knew how to work with energy, and they would take energy from various sources, and they would use this energy to sustain their life force, and they could live a really long time based off of learning how to work with this energy. So the original vampires, a lot of it didn't have anything to do with the shedding of the blood. This is later on, you get a lot of vampires that started to get into sacrifice. This is when the knowledge, the real live, deep knowledge of vampirism and work on energy begin to get distorted. And this is where you got these lesser occultists out here that's dealing with blood sacrifice and things of this nature. They're dealing with blood sacrifice because they don't understand energy. They don't even understand the school of the vampire, though they call themselves vampires, but they don't really know what a vampire is. You see, when I take you into like ancient Egypt and things like that, I'm going to really help you to understand what a vampire is. You see, because they learned, these vampires knew how to take energy from hugging somebody. They knew how to take energy from just touching somebody's a person's item or something like a shoe that belonged to a person, anything that had life force on it. Now you might say that's wrong. Why are they taking people's life force? So you mean to tell me there's people out here that they can hug people and take their life force? See, what you guys fail to realize is that women are the masters of this, because women, whether they are conscious of it or not, because many women are conscious of it, they know how to, they are what you call power. In the occult, women are synonymous with power. And they can hug somebody and take their energy automatically and store it. They have sex with men all the time and they take you guys' energy. This is why they can have sex with you, and then after the sex, they're like all powerful. Like they're happy, they got all this energy, they like, you like sleep, and they like cleaning up the house, they like, oh, I got all this energy, where did I get it from? She got all this energy because she drained and took your energy from you. And then it's unconscious, she's not doing this on purpose, so I'm just helping you to see, like, don't get mad at me because I'm saying that vampires, people out here that know how to take energy, because a lot of people might get scared of me and look at it like, well, you taking people's energy or whatever. This is something that's done by women and a lot of people subconsciously right now. But what I'm trying to help you to understand is that it was a time where it was a group of men, mostly, and women under Moors and Moabites that knew how to take energy and store it and work with it. And they were immortals, some of them died or whatever, but even when they died, you see, this is why vampires are called the undead, because even when they died, they could, by them storing enough energy, they knew that once they so-called died and transformed, they could still be very much physical and appear and be very much physical as long as they stored up enough energy while they were living. Because in the vampire system of school, actually right now you're dead, and when you die you became an immortal. When you lose the body, you became living, or the undead. That's what they call it, the undead. So it's a lot of information. I'm going to help you to understand it as other videos come out. So basically the whole vampire thing is about energy, working with energy, taking energy and working with it, storing it up, so that when you transform, even when you meditate and do certain things, you will be able to still be able to exist in this state, on this earthly state, and be able to manipulate events and do things even when you're dead. So this is why, you know what I'm saying, a lot of people that are spoke of when they say that he's going to haunt you from his grave or whatever, when you get that terminology about people haunting people from their grave, they got that information from beings that learn how to work with energy. See, that's why certain people don't care about getting killed. You know what I'm saying? They don't care about getting killed. They like, you can kill me because I'm going to haunt you from the grave, because they learn how to store up enough energy to where they'll wreak havoc on their murderers and the people that try to kill them from the grave, and they'll still be manipulating events. And this is what's called immortality, or a certain degree of it. Now there's another, I'm going to do videos on immortality and really help you to understand how it works. But there's another aspect of immortality that I have to point out here in the vampire video, that you actually can be considered an immortal here on Earth. And an immortal is someone that lives for hundreds and even thousands of years. And there, believe it or not, you people that are from America listening to this video know nothing of this, but based on my research, there's people, the Chinese government, I already knew about this, but I found out actually that the Chinese government has documented certain immortals over there that are like 200 to 300 years old. There are people in Tibet right now that are 300, 400 years old. There are immortals that have been documented to live thousands of years old, females that learn how to be immortals. So the concept of immortals actually deals with not even just death, but you could be an immortal and be living. And you know this is true because how do you think Noah, Methuselah, and certain individuals, even Adam, they live to be hundreds of years old, and how come you're dying at like 60 and 70, but then you say you have this deep concept and this deep spirituality, you call yourself a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, you say you got this deep spiritual concept, but you can't even live past 100 years old. So how deep are you really? That's what you got to look at. And it's like people really need to stop playing. They really need to stop playing and like really embrace this occult information for real, and really at least study it for what it is and get into it and understand it, and stop getting all emotional and getting all religious. I read the comments, I laugh at them. You can leave out the comments you want, I laugh at you guys. Leave all the comments you want about religion and I need to find Jesus and all of that. You lived for 300, 400 years and didn't tell me that, based on your religious Christianity concept. You lived for 300, 400 years and didn't tell me that, and tell me what I need to find. And then you got occultists out there that's talking about Enochian magic and, you know, and all of this different stuff. But it's like your leaders that talk this stuff, I'm not going to name their names, did they live to be 300 or 400 years old? Most of them were meat eaters. They didn't know they knew about all this occult stuff, but how come they didn't live to be 300, 400 years old? So this is something that you got to think about. This is something you really got to think about. So the concept of vampires goes back to working with energy, learning how to store energy and do certain things with it. It wasn't always about people that bit people on the neck to drink their blood. This concept of vampires had a very occult, deep meaning behind it, and it ties into dragons, it ties into the earth quarantine, and it ties into a lot of information that I'm going to cover in other videos. But I just wanted to lay a foundation for you guys to help you to understand that there are vampires, mostly actually your original vampires, if you want to call it that, were actually vegetarians, a lot of them, and they dealt with the Kundalini energy. And I'm going to help you to understand what the Kundalini energy is, or the snake energy. And they dealt with the school of Tahuti. A lot of, they were initiates. Most of the original Moorish vampires that taught the vampirism, and they weren't called vampires. They were actually called something different, without going to in another video. I'm not going to release the name in this video, but they weren't called vampires. Vampires, and the concept of that came through Europe. That was their name for these group of immortals, or men and women that knew how to live for long periods of time and knew how to work with energy. So vampires aren't bad. It's very deep. It's a spiritual science. Vampirism, more immortality. It ties into that. It ties into the undead gods, and it's a really great topic. And I'm going to help you to understand more of it as more videos come. So I thank you for watching this video. Peace.